What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for a discussion of the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Van Aken, and today I'm joined by Marcus Stewart. How are you, Marcus?
I'm feeling great. I'm worried we won't have enough to talk about today, but I'm sure we'll make it work.
Yeah, nothing really going on this week in the world of games, unfortunately. Maybe we can talk about Fortnite again. I'm always down to do that.
You know what? When all else fails, break the Fortnite glass, right?
That maybe VR. Those are, I know, two topics people love me talking about.
Yeah, I got some mobile games we can talk about too.
Oh,
if we
perfect.
want.
Yeah, I'm down. I've also finally played Chrono Trigger, so we can dive deep into that.
Oh, did you finish it or just like play a little bit of it?
No, I'm kidding. I've never.
Oh, I was getting excited. I was like, yeah, let's talk about.
See, that's the thing. When people talk about Chrono Trigger, for me, that's when I'm like, next podcast.
Yeah.
I've heard people talk about it like countless times over the years.
Kyle's opinion of you rose in real time and then immediately
immediately
to whatever it was.
I've played like 5 hours of that game. It's a cool game,
Okay.
but not
That's
recently. That voice you're hearing is Kyle Hilliard. How you doing, Kyle?
Yeah, good. Just leaving slow news day comments on a bunch of stories here.
Yeah.
Just give me a few minutes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay. Good.
Make sure you send those over to GameSpot and IGN as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Wesley LeBlanc, how you doing, Wes?
I'm doing good. I read a book, so I can talk about that.
Whoa, what book?
Yeah. It's actually a cyberpunk book. It's called Cyberpunk 2077. What is it called? No Coincidence. I read it a while ago. I just wanted to be fun, and I don't have any fun stuff.
Wait,
to
is
talk
that's
about,
not
so I pick up a book.
That's like coming out, right? Alongside like Phantom Liberty and
It's out. Yeah, it's been out for a minute now.
I remember the cover. I saw people tweeting their free press copies. And
Wait, is it just a novelization of the game, or does it push things forward?
No, it's it's written by the showrunner of Edge Runners. And it's like just a standalone story. It's actually
I didn't know that.
pretty good. I probably should have brought it up weeks ago when I actually did finish it instead of using it as a joke for today's show. But
What's it called?
Books are cool. Cyberpunk 2077, No Coincidences.
Gotcha.
Yeah, books
Is
are
it a
cool.
Japanese author?
No, it is a Polish author whose name I can't pronounce because it's too far away to read.
But you read it in English, right?
Yes, yeah.
Say it's the Witcher writer.
I know you've been going hard on Duolingo.
Because he says the Edge Runner showrunner. Is that Rafal Jackie probably?
The last name's like Rafal Zach or something.
Okay. I think that, because like the Edge Runners was written by Japanese writers, but I guess the showrunner, like you said. Anyway, I'm totally pulling us aside for your joke.
No, this is. I mean, like I said, this is the show today, so.
Yeah, I just
It's a
didn't realize
slow
it had those sort of tie. I guess if it's Cyberpunk, it has a tie to Edge Runners, I guess. But I'm so enamored with Edge Runners in particular.
Yeah, that show ruled.
But yeah, I asked the CD Projekt a couple questions about it when I did that big feature about it, and they were just their response to it was like, well, I was like, are there more references to Edge Runners in the game? And they're like, it's all Cyberpunk. Like, what do you mean references to Edge Runners?
I mean, you stupid idiot.
Edge Runners is a reference to Cyberpunk. Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah. Do they reference the Sandevestein in this?
I don't think
Yeah.
any of that.
It's
I mean,
referenced
I'm wearing David's
and in the
jacket
game.
while I'm playing.
Do they reference Night City? Night City? Does Night City have a cameo?
Am I bad for canceling my Netflix before I finish that show?
Yeah, it's like
I'm surprised you didn't finish it.
very, very good show.
I'm bad
So,
with
yes.
watching TV
Bad
shows. Like
Marcus.
even if it's good, it's not my go-to for how I spend my free time. Basically, I take a while to get through shows.
You have to understand that I watch a lot of anime, but also a large portion of my personality is framed around Akira specifically. So if like Edge Runners is like the closest something has gotten to Akira in like recent years. You know?
Do you own a motorcycle? Has it gotten to that point?
No, but I exclusively ride the Kusanagi in Cyberpunk. I never drive anything else. That's the only motorcycle I drive because it looks like Kaneda's motorcycle.
Okay.
Kyle, did you know Bryce Coe, the artist behind Sea of Stars, all their key art and stuff?
Oh yeah,
They
yeah,
did our
they did our covers.
Yeah. They just posted on Instagram a few days ago. I saw it and thought of you. They did an Akira piece. Yeah, I don't know if it's available for sale or what, but it's sick.
Yeah, I'm currently bidding on some Akira animation cells on heritageauctions.com.
Oh,
and
wow.
they've already ballooned to like way beyond what I could ever afford. I'm like, I'll throw in my $50, and they're like, how about 3,000?
Yeah, I was like, why are you blowing your spot up? But then you said it's already out of range. So, yeah.
Now that the oil tycoons have entered the chat, who also happen to be big Akira fans, apparently.
Yeah, oil tycoon and anime fan.
And I am looking at this Akira art is very cool. Thanks for pointing it out to me, Alex.
Yeah. You should see if maybe you can pull some strings since he worked on our art. Maybe you can be like, hey, buddy,
give me that.
Yeah, can I
print that out? Send it to me.
Hey, if Rice Co wants to send some posters over, I've got the space. You can be on every GI show if you want, right here on these walls. Well, let's get into the show this week. All jokes aside, it's a packed show. We're going to be diving into the Microsoft leaks, which highlight leaked consoles, upcoming games, including like franchises that I thought we weren't going to get any more entries in for a while. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Marcus went hands-on with it, correct?
I did.
In addition to Spider-Man 2, Marcus has been busy. He's been playing all this stuff. Kyle and Wes have been playing Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. And Wes here is the person who reviewed that for Game Informer. So yeah, we got a great show. On top of that, we're going to round it out at the end, talking about how Unity, the technology company who creates the Unity game engine, which is utilized by hundreds of thousands of developers across the world, has betrayed their trust. So it's going to be a big week. Let's dive in. You guys want to start with the Microsoft stuff? This leaked court document?
Yeah, at the time that we're recording, it is Tuesday, which is the day that all of this broke out earlier this morning. So who knows, by the time this airs, there might even be more stuff out there.
Yeah.
that comes to light. So, but yeah, this will be the sort of like initial batch of stuff that is rolled out. The first wave of the avalanche.
Yeah, I'm looking here to see how many pages this document is. Where can I do that?
Yeah, I haven't even looked at the actual document.
206
gigantic PDF, right?
It's 271 pages of internal.
And we're going to read it all on air.
All here, yep, dramatic reading.
Yeah.
There is actually some juicy stuff that I've like clipped out here and there. But like just in general, it's been kind of wild seeing all this stuff. It's pretty unprecedented.
So I guess we should preface by saying this happened as a result of the FTC versus Microsoft sort of like court battle that's going on over the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. And maybe Wes, you should say this because I feel like I'm still getting the story straight about how this leaked exactly, but at least at the time that we're recording, it sounds like someone on the Microsoft side it is
a clerical error for sure. But Wes, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, definitely not intentional, and it was not the FTC, which I had seen some people floating. They might be doing it maliciously. That's not the case.
Also, I don't know if you saw, but their tweet that's been retweeted where they just straight up said like we didn't do that. Like don't put that on us.
Yeah, I don't even think they have access to the platform that it was leaked to. So it was somebody else involved. But just take it away.
So basically, hundreds, probably thousands of documents uploaded to, the court's legal proceeding system where it's presumably safe and redacted and goes through all the stuff it needs to go through. Within those documents, you can have attachments, and you can have attachments on attachments. And basically, in a very Inception-esque way, there was a document with an attachment, and in that attachment was a PDF that was unredacted, and it turned out to be this 200 plus page PDF of basically everything, of all of these emails and timelines and console plans, just more stuff than I ever would imagined was necessary for their court case to acquire Activision Blizzard. That's what's like continues to blow my mind, is that all of this had to make an appearance in court, or at least be within the legal system. And I mean, the TLDR is that somebody didn't redact properly and uploaded an unredacted document. And now Microsoft's 10 years of plans have been blasted all over the internet. Still haven't figured out who initially found this. It clearly had to be somebody who was like paying attention to every little update that happens within those systems, because it is public record, even if it's redacted. But yeah, somebody hit a gold mine of 200 pages of highly sensitive, confidential Microsoft information. And I don't think it's fair to say we've not seen anything even like close to this in terms of video game leaks.
I was wondering that, if like, is this the biggest leak? Because I thought about the Nintendo leak or not the Nintendo, but the Nvidia leak from a couple of years ago. That was also pretty massive. And has
the Walmart leak was kind of big, but yeah. And then I mean, this is a separate game, but like the GTA 6 thing from last year of like the build of the game getting out there.
I think in terms of
I think of that stuff a lot, like GTA 6 and like Half-Life 2. You know, those were huge leaks, but they were like singular games that were sort of getting ready to come out, where this is like, this must have been sent like even beyond the Xbox division. This was probably for like Microsoft higher ups to kind of get a lay of the land, right? To like a better understanding of what's coming.
I mean, these are emails from the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, talking to chief creative officers in Microsoft about acquiring some of the biggest names in games. Like, this is, it's exactly what you don't want to get out to the public, and it did.
Got an email being like, I don't know, guys, In-N-Out for lunch today. What do you think?
Yeah, there were talks of, they evaluated a big one that has been like brought out since last night when all this stuff went viral, was like, like Wes said, the acquisition of Nintendo, and how effectively Phil Spencer is of the opinion that they're going to play the long game, and they're going to try to wear down Nintendo eventually, and hopefully Nintendo sees the light and realizes that, you know, they could bring their software to Xbox and it would be mass. That's like the gist of what Spencer's argument was.
Or not even wear down, because like, it doesn't sound like they were going to do anything to kind of like force Nintendo's hand.
No, I just mean like
wait around until.
Yeah, like I think, but what I mean by wear down is like, we're just going to be like good partners to them and continue to maybe like chime on that beat a little bit,
just
but
make sure Nintendo knows it's always on the table, right? Just a little reminder of like, by the way, you know, if you guys are interested, we can talk about this.
They're taking the same strategy as like middle school me, who was too shy to directly ask girls out to like be dates. So you're like, well, if I just be their friend and be super nice for like a really long period of time, sooner or later they'll just be like, hey, this is a cool guy, and it'll just happen, right?
And that always works, Marcus? Well,
Nintendo is still much like the girls that I fancied at the time. It's not going to work.
It's something that's remarkable about me with that email is like, I don't know how you guys talk in email, but I'm like I say just exactly what needs to be said. I don't really like emailing, so it's like quick and cordial. But Phil Spencer in this email said, acquiring Nintendo would be a career moment, a good move for both companies, and that it is taking Nintendo, quote, a long time, quote, to see that their future exists off of their own hardware, end quote. Like, that is a lot of confidence
very presumptuous
to have. And mind you, Nintendo, their console doing better than their competitors right now. Like, the Switch is doing crazy numbers compared to Xbox, but Phil Spencer's like, I just think Nintendo needs to see the light. Like, they should not be in hardware.
When was this email dated?
I was gonna say that email
2020
years old. I was gonna say, if this was like Wii U era, then
2020 Nintendo was also massive. That was Animal Crossing. Was this after March?
Yeah, this is August. So I guess the Xbox wasn't out yet. Maybe Phil was like, this Series X is about to just clobber everybody.
Maybe.
Which, I mean,
But
the Series
even
X
then
has done well, but not Switch numbers.
I mean, I'm gonna say like that would be foolish because like the Switch was already like 3 years old at that point, was already a proven like massive success, even by 2020, even before Animal Crossing. So that would be that'd be quite the leap to make. Like, they'll see the light, even though they're doing completely fine.
Went so well with Apple. Just Nintendo is just killing it on the iPhones, you know.
Yeah. Man,
it's just like a rare look at candor we don't see from these executives, which I guess is what is expected when you look at their previously private emails.
Yeah, I'm this is not really, I thought this was interesting. This is on page 100 of the document. There's an email from an employee who's an engineer, Jean-Emile Alien. They are I looked them up. They're a senior level architect, kind of focused on like future tech for Microsoft. They're not necessarily a CFO or a CGO, but they're, you know, a higher engineer that has access to Spencer. And they kind of were going back and forth on March 17th, 2021. And effectively, Jean-Emile starts an email off to Spencer saying, offhand question, based on the Google and Amazon news relative to their attempts at building game studios, does Game Pass change how you think about the value of a studio? In 2014, before Game Pass, the life of a studio felt like it was determined by its ability to sustain itself in content produced. Farther away from the business than I am now, but each given studio pitched their own revenue. That's how it's looked. Given this transition, how do you now think about the value of any given studio relative to the portfolio? With it representing 3/4 of your staff, I assume it's something top of mind. Not critical, no relation to any current organization drama, just catching up on the developments and other cloud companies coming to grips with the reality of gaming. And so that's effectively the first email. He continues on, but for our purposes, I want to move on to the responses that follow. Phil's initial email back says, totally think differently today. We need to drive engagement. That is the oxygen for our service and business growth. Engagement comes through content, and we drive engagement. And as we drive engagement, the content becomes more valuable. We are actually the better owner for any game IP than any other publisher on the planet right now, as we can drive engagement through retail and subscription, which leads to higher revenue. I want to keep that lead and actually extend it so our investment in studios, as you've seen, has increased. I want to make it clear to Google, Amazon, etc., that you are not, in all caps, going to catch us in gaming. And one of the reasons cited internally at Google for them diversifying to the first party was our ZeniMax acquisition. I just want to put us out of reach. Phil. Anyways, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I kind of have a back and forth.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I don't think they were ever in danger of either of those companies catching up to them in gaming.
but there's a pointed email that hits here in a minute and there's some interesting things that are that are said by Phil. So Jean-Emile, this is now their second email to Phil, and in reply to Phil's response says, the moat is clear. I've heard as much from Google friends about the chill the ZeniMax acquisition had on their plans. So how should studios now measure their worth to the portfolio? I know you dislike the Netflix analogy, but I'm trying to understand the equivalent of, quote, ending a show, in quotes, in their model. We ended further investment in Bleeding Edge, for example. Is that how I will see changes going forward? Still waiting for the episodic content, in parentheses, rest in peace Telltale, to show up in Game Pass. That will be awesome. We're about to get to some heat here.
It's like a real voyeurism. Like,
I know. Phil responds, the truth is to your answer of how to measure worth is we don't know. It's some combination of attract and retain to our service. Different games perform differently. Some are very high on play and therefore a higher impact on retention. Others are good top of funnel for attract, but don't get much play. You need both. I'd be lying to you if I told you we had an Excel sheet of the value of a game completely figured out. We are working with Microsoft chief economists on the value of content, and they have a model that we have working, but it's not complete, in parentheses, and likely never will be. At some point, what you are asking is, quote, why do people like X, end quotes. And that's a hard question to answer. It's going to be a very organic process for us for sure. All right, bear with me, listener. We're almost there. Okay, here's where I was like, oh, the tea. So Jean-Emile, this engineer, replies, and keep in mind, like, this is all very civil. Just like I'm not stirring up things. When I say tea, I just mean like this is what I found like fascinating in the back and forths. Jean-Emile says that's completely fair. I'd be really saddened if the reduction of an inherently creative endeavor to a single cell going red was the determinant. How about looking back on the studio closures of the past? Would a product like Game Pass have changed your mind on any particular studio's closure? As to how people like a particular game, that isn't my interest because I like genres that aren't, quote, the hotness, and I'm excited by Game Pass's potential to allow those kinds of games to have a home. Ultimately, this for me is looking to understand the major investments of our org and determining how to best support it. For what it's worth, I don't expect concrete answers, and I see a lot being emphasized in the email, of opinions across the org. Just trading my ML on what I should see as the art versus the science of gaming. Okay, and this is where Phil sends back a pointed email and says, I feel like the highlighted question is a preview of an opinion you have. Do you think Game Pass would have saved a studio we once owned? Phil. And then Jean-Emile.
That's the email where I'm like shaking. Oh, yeah. Why did my boss just send me that? Whoops.
Two more emails and then we're done with this chronicle. Jean-Emile replies, my turn to say, honestly, I don't know. I don't really know what goes into closing a studio. How much funding versus personnel versus output feeds into the decision. In my mind, if a studio completely needs to prove their worth by being net value over their costs, it adds a ton of pressure to release hits on a regular basis. If a game is niche, though, too bad? ? This is not armchair quarterbacking, I swear. I'm just super worried about the moat you've built and that the winds will change and we will have a bloodbath a few years down the road, especially given our peer companies underestimating the game creation process and, quote, but by the grace of God we go, end quotes. This person's very poetic. Not my job, I appreciate. So trying to train my mental model on how to think about the content side of the house to not be worried, especially where the economics have changed with Game Pass. All right, and this is the last email that Phil replies. I don't think we've ever closed a studio due to the studio's profit and loss. It's almost always been either from leadership leaving, Lionhead as an example, or a team just losing its passion, Ensemble as an example. Ensemble notably worked on Halo Wars, tons of Age of Empires games, and then that was the email back from Phil. And effectively, like the last email from Jean-Emile is just saying, the end paragraph is kind of what's important to us. It says, quote, this is also the second time you've called me on a, quote, question that sounds like an opinion, end quotes, which leads me to believe this happens to you a lot. I promise if I have an opinion that is worth sending an email, I will. I appreciate this forum too much to be disingenuous. But like, I just thought it was fascinating, like internally, like this a lead architect, questioning, I mean, the bloodbath about Game Pass. Like they are very aware that like if things go awry with their content plans, then yeah, I just thought it was fascinating. Like this is dated March 2021. And yeah, just kind of employee, not everybody buying into the vision, it seemed like.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to see. I've never worked like in super corporate America, whatever type jobs. So like hearing emails written out this way and just having these full-on discussions seems so foreign to me. And I don't know, this person must be really high up because to like talk to Phil Spencer about Game Pass, which is effectively his baby, and refer to like potential bloodbaths and your moat and all these things. It's just, I don't know, it's bewildering to me. Props to him for but
it's like that there are people who are questioning everything. Like you want that in an organization, but
yeah, that was 2 years ago.
Happening enough.
2 years ago. There's a lot of stuff. I think we're going to continue to find, like, here are interesting stories that are coming out of these documents, and obviously there's been a ton of news as well. I think I've kind of buried the lead a bit. Wes, do you want to catch us up on kind of like the top level games that have leaked, consoles in production? I saw a document for their 2028 vision that had like handhelds listed. Yeah.
So we'll go with the easy ones first, which would be games. So it's not specifically just Xbox games. It was a ZeniMax management forecast document. So this is basically just Bethesda games. And it's already out of date when you look at it because some games have released outside of when they had it scheduled. But basically, it's a title release schedule. Notably on there, we see things like Indiana Jones game, which they had planned for fiscal year 2022. And ZeniMax operates on a January through December fiscal year. So 2022 for them ends in December 2022. And obviously, we didn't get that game to show you how out of date this could be.
The Machine Games Indiana Jones game, the Wolfenstein devs.
Yeah. They wanted to get out with Dial of Destiny, but I'm guessing at one point they were just like, well, it's not going to happen.
Was this email, all this pre-COVID? Do we know?
This does not have a date on it, but it's covering fiscal year 20 through 24.
Okay.
So I'm guessing it came out in 2020 because they were still like projecting outward to 2020.
Yeah.
But we also see Oblivion Remaster, which was rumored, and now to see it on a ZeniMax doc. Doesn't mean it's real. Doesn't mean it's happening. This could just be like a blue sky thing that they've written down. But someone at ZeniMax and Bethesda has discussed it. Starfield DLC, Doom 0 Year and DLC, new Doom game maybe. The Elder Scrolls 6, which they are projecting for fiscal year 24 on this document, which we already know is not happening because another document, which Marcus wrote up yesterday, says that game's not coming out until at least 2026, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
there was another. Sorry, the only thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Be contradicting. There was like a testimony that Phil Spencer gave at a court thing that he said that the game was at least 5 years out, which would put it past 2026. So I don't know which one is accurate there, but it sounds like, it would still be 2026 at the
whichever
earliest.
is the later date. It's probably the accurate
and then
one.
add like 2 years to it. Yeah,
exactly.
Fallout 3 remaster, Ghostwire Tokyo sequel, which we know Blake Hester will be excited about. And I think probably most exciting for myself and Alex, Dishonored 3 is on the docket for fiscal year 24.
Again,
which obviously
this could not be happening, but the fact that at one point someone at ZeniMax thought, we should write down Dishonored 3 on this graph makes me very happy. As somebody who has thought I would probably never get a Dishonored game again. But
it was after Redfall's reviews and someone turned and said, Dishonored 3, get on that.
We should check in on that game. What's that game doing? It's got
Redfall? Oh, God. Honestly, until I
it's had a few updates,
I forgot about the game.
I think, as I pointed out in my review, like I think a lot of that game, like, updates can help, but it was just fundamentally flawed as like in terms of like game design. It just a lot of it didn't work well together. But
so those are ZeniMax or Bethesda games, and then elsewhere in these documents we have detailed documents that kind of outline plans for an Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S refresh happening next year alongside a new controller. If you go to GameInformer.com, we have pictures from the documents. The Xbox Series X refresh has like a code name of Brooklyn, spelled not the way that it is in New York. It looks like a black cylindrical Wi-Fi router. Most notably, no disk drive, but 2 terabytes of storage, and it will be the same price as a Series X, so $500. I know a good bit about technology as it relates to consoles, but I know there's other sites like The Verge who are diving way deeper into that. Based on these specs, it's not like a Pro like we saw with the Xbox One X last year or last gen or the PS4 Pro. but it will have like better Wi-Fi, better Bluetooth, a different processor that allows it to be a little more efficient, stuff like that. I don't think
this is not a Pro, is what you're saying, right?
No,
let's redesign it.
Yeah, and I guess you also lose the ability to lay it on its side.
It just rolls.
You
away.
could still technically.
God, they're gonna sell a stand so you can put it sideways, probably just like a little, scoop that holds it in place.
The Xbox Series S refresh is called Elwood. A lot less happening here in terms of refresh.
Looks identical. I'm looking at my Xbox Series S in front of me.
Yeah.
And this image looks identical. Like not even like the ports are even the same on the front.
Yeah.
And comes
Elwood,
with a terabyte of storage.
Just because I know everyone's thinking it. Yes, Elwood is the protagonist character from Legally Blonde and the sequel. I don't know why they're nicknaming it after her, but I just want to clear that up. So we can move
Legally Blonde game confirm.
Finally, a Phoenix Wright.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it comes with a terabyte, which they just released this month, a black Series S that comes with a terabyte. But this one will have the better Wi-Fi, better Bluetooth, more efficient use of power. It will also be $300, which is what a Series S costs today. And then the last bit of this refresh is Sebile, which is a new Xbox controller.
Sebile
looks very similar.
Yeah.
Sebile looks very similar to what we have now with Xbox. Most notably, it has haptic feedback, which has been a feature that's on PlayStation's DualSense controller. It has another set of special haptics, VCA haptics. Not sure what the VCA is, but they double as speakers, and it has an accelerometer, which could indicate gyro function, but gyro and accelerometer are technically two pieces of a puzzle that create one feature, which is like being able to move your controller all around. So I hesitate to say that this will be like a gyro controller, but it has a feature that might indicate it will be, and quieter buttons and thumbsticks. And
notably, it's also two-toned, like the PS5 controller. Similar to the Xbox, but it kind of just cuts across.
Yeah,
it's not
kind of like if you dipped it in chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, yeah. Wow,
Is this maybe a dumb question? Is the PlayStation 5 that has gyro controls, right? Doesn't it?
I think so.
I feel like
you can type
Astro's Playroom
use the keypad to.
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I was just trying to remember. Yeah, I was like Astro's Playroom.
I never use it
at some point.
So
I don't think a lot of games use it.
No.
Yeah, I know Fortnite uses it, and I spoke to a person who did Fortnite mods. He actually works for Epic now on Fortnite, who helped bring over gyro controls on the Switch version. I don't remember what the story's called. If you look up Game Informer gyro Fortnite, you might find it. But he basically told me that, like, if you're using a controller, if you get good with gyro and aiming with thumbsticks, you can be as good as like a PC player. Like that's how
I believe it. Yeah,
good.
I've heard that
a well-made gyro function can be.
Like the pro like Splatoon players are really big on the gyro controls. Like that's where I've heard that sentiment the most, is that the real players use the Switch motion controls or whatever.
I mean, both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I totally use the motion controls and like think have better accuracy as a result. So really? I believe it, but you gotta commit to it and practice.
See, I'm a poser. Whenever I play Mario Kart, I say I'm using tilt controls, but I never actually am. I'm lying. Always.
I don't think that. I think that's just being a liar.
I just think it's fun. I just like the little Mario Kart.
Let's start doing that when I lie. I'm not lying. I'm just posing.
Yeah,
posing, Mom.
I'm just getting in their head, man. I'm not lying.
But yeah, those are the console refreshes. Anything you guys want to touch on there before we jump to 2028?
I mean, I was going to mention, like, at least for the games, is there anything that you guys are excited about besides Dishonored 3? I mean, the Oblivion remaster, when that was rumored, I was like, okay, because that was my entry into Elder Scrolls, and I adore that game. But I saw an interesting tweet that I hadn't thought about, and I wish I could attribute it to whoever it was. I don't remember the name, but they said that the downer of an Oblivion remaster is that one of the charms of Oblivion is how janky it is, and like how weird. Like, one of my favorite things to do is to look up just weird emergent moments in that game of just like scripting not even going wrong, but just occurring in a comical way of like NPCs talking to you and being like, give me your money, and then you give them money, and then they're like, hey, you should watch out, there's bandits here, and it's like, but you're a bandit. And just like stepping on traps and getting crushed by things, and it's just like there's like an unintentional comedic timing that game has that has only become more pronounced as it has aged. And a remaster would surely sand a lot of those rough edges away to where it's like it'll be the best playing version of the game, but would it lose a lot of that charm in the process?
I think so.
That kind of made me think about the prospect of a remaster in a different way of like, oh man, yeah, I guess I don't know if it'll be like as fun, even if it's like a better version.
It's also just a gorgeous game. I played it in 2021. I went and like bought a physical copy at my local shop, and I decided I just wanted to play Oblivion, and I was actually hunting for the unicorn in that game for a video that ended up not panning out, but I just got sucked back into Oblivion, and that game I was blown away by how good it still looks. Like art direction really carries it, and the post processing they're using, like it's a really great use of fog and line of sight and draw distance and stuff. They really nailed it in Oblivion. I think even more so than maybe Skyrim, and just like for what it was at the time. And like how it holds up now. Oblivion to me it still has that charm, whereas when I fire Skyrim up, I'm like, oh, I want to be playing the latest version of this,
Plus, if you want a cleaned up Oblivion, I mean, there's plenty of mods that exist.
Are they doing Sky Oblivion as well?
That too. Yeah, which that hasn't finished yet, right? So it's this like, I mean, again, assuming this actually happens, but like, does that step on those toes a bit, assuming that whatever they do is comparable to the work that Sky Oblivion has going into it?
Yeah, I mean, Sky Oblivion also has the hurdle of being a massive mod that a lot of general players are, number one, probably scared to break something. I know before I was familiar with PC gaming, like the thought of modding something terrifying, because I'm like, what if I mess up my save or I mess up my console or something like that? And then they kind of dissuade you also with like disabling achievements and stuff, even though there are a lot of mods now in games that will re-enable the achievements if you have mods turned on. It gets very meta, but I feel like them releasing like an official version of that, I think they could coexist,
for sure.
That's definitely like that game and Dishonored 3 are definitely the two that stood out of like, oh, okay. Like again, the Oblivion one was like, okay, there's some truth to that rumor, it looks like. That Doom game, I would like to see. I like those two Doom games, especially the first one, the new ones, I mean. So I wasn't expecting that either. So that's cool. And like Fallout 3, didn't expect that either. Love that game. I don't know if it has quite the same charm as Oblivion in the same way, but I mean, that's still my favorite Fallout game. Probably like New Vegas being a very close second. So, hey. Yeah. Also, wasn't there a rumor that New Vegas was going to get a remaster at some point too?
Undoubtedly, right? I'm sure.
Yeah, I thought that was like relatively recent, but I don't know. What about you guys? Anything besides Dishonored jump out at you? Like, oh, I want that.
No, I'm a little drama goblin, and so like all the stuff I was looking at in the document was like, I'm just the thing. I'm like, what are they saying?
Drama goblin.
Yeah,
I mean, it's all fun too, but like all of this stuff, I'm always like grain of salt, right?
Oh,
it's
of course.
Like, these things could all change. Nothing's confirmed. It's like I don't look at this and get excited like Dishonored 3 is coming. I look at it and I'm like, oh, I'm glad Dishonored 3 has been brought up internally at Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Before we do transition to 2028, I have one email. It's a singular email. It's short. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole again. But it's an interesting look at Microsoft, specifically Phil Spencer's perspective as of May 2022. And he looked at the business and was offering a lot of critical feedback. And I think it's important to note before we transition to 2028. So in an email from Phil Spencer, May 7th, 2022, to Matt Booty, Jamie Letter, Sarah Bond, Jarrett West, Tim Stewart, subject is games importance high. Quote, with the news that Starfield is going to miss holiday and not broadly parentheses, sorry, not broadly communicated yet. Let's let Jamie manage that. Still not a ton of clarity on the launch date of Redfall and Stalker 2 development being so impacted by the war in Ukraine. I feel we are in a huge hole with our games lineup, both for platform marketing differentiation and our Game Pass content. We keep talking about there's typos. AAA a quarter in the service, and it feels like we are likely to go through a gap of almost 16 months between big exclusive launches on our platform. Halo Infinite being our last one on December 8th, 2021. This is really a disaster situation for us, given we've invested in content across studios at our Game Pass content fund. We need to learn from this and build a plan forward. In terms of learning, I think we need to get much better at overall portfolio planning on our games with real honesty on dates. Doing this from memory, from summer 2021 through December 21, we had an amazing lineup of games with Flight Sim to console, Psychonauts 2, Age 4, Forza Horizon 5, and Halo. There were good third-party games in that time frame as well, like Back 4 Blood. We set a very high bar in 2021 on quality and pacing of content, which was awesome to see. But to come off of that year with no big exclusive launching in 2022 is a portfolio planning miss that we can't afford. If we need to delay launches, parentheses, understanding there is a financial impact of that, to create more regular beats for us, we need to do that. We have to all understand that the situation we are in now is a failure of our planning and production execution. Now, let's roll up the sleeves and get planning on the next 2 years of games. First, we need to build an accurate list of new game launches that are coming in the next 24 months with expected dates. For now, I don't want to litter this list with content updates or seasons for existing games. We need launches. Let's build this across first party, second party, and third party, looking at Game Pass launches. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, last year was famously not great for them.
Yeah.
I even now I have to remember, like, what did they put out last year that was like first party? Like, I don't even remember anymore. I remember it wasn't much because stuff got delayed, like Starfield and Redfall.
It's also interesting that they don't even mention like Ninja Theory's game Senua, Hellblade 2, and that, like, looking ahead, we've got he was saying we've got Stalker 2 and Redfall, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, not even mentioning. So that tells me, like, that game is even.
I mean, at the time that was
at the time in May 2022.
Yeah.
I mean, they might also treat that as a different tier, a different type of
tier
of game too. Like, those are a lot of like shooter action games that appeal to a wide audience. Like Hellblade's kind of that like indie film from a major studio that they're hoping gets that Oscar. You know, but isn't really gonna
I feel like they like
give
hyped
it the Marvel budget for marketing, you know.
Yeah, I feel like they hyped it up so much though in that first big presentation with the console, and like I feel like when I just anecdotally looking at social media, I see Xbox fans like very hopeful and like, don't forget about this thing. It's like,
I mean, to be clear, I love Hellblade. I love that game, but it's like, it is a game to the point where I can't really recommend. It's like, you're gonna feel bad. You're gonna be uncomfortable, but you're gonna really be like, happy's not even the right word, but you're gonna be like, damn, that was an experience afterward. It's like, how do you sort of put that on the docket of like, and coming to Game Pass, an uncomfortable experience.
Players gonna be real sad.
I always tell people, like, it's not fun. I would never
not
say
the
that
right word for this
fun.
one.
But it's definitely worth checking out.
I can't wait for that game. I'm gonna feel bad for a couple of days, and then I'm gonna feel great afterward.
All right, Wes,
I
take
feel
us
like
to
it's
2028.
their closest. Oh, No,
No, you're good. I want to hear what you said. I didn't know you were talking. I'm sorry. The Discord delay got us good there.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I feel like they should hype up Senua more. One, because I think that first reveal trailer at the Game Awards is still like one of the best trailers ever made. It's so good. But also, I think it's like their closest analog to what PlayStation games are like, or are viewed as. Like, I don't know. I see Xbox first party and PlayStation first party, and they're mostly very different to me. But I feel like Senua I could see that as a PlayStation first party game. You know, dark, doesn't make you feel good, third person action. And yeah, like what you were about to say, Marcus, is it was just PlayStation at first, right?
It used to be just a PlayStation exclusive, so it was part of their sort of like prestige television of games catalog.
But yeah, so they should talk about it more. I'm excited for Senua.
Yeah.
But yes, jumping ahead to 2028 when Hellblade 2 is hopefully out by now. A document came out for a cohesive hybrid compute device. Basically their next gen console without naming it or explaining what it looks like or kind of indicating how it will work. But we do know that they're viewing it as a next generation hybrid game platform capable of leveraging the combined power of the client, presumably like the hardware, and cloud to deliver deeper immersion in entirely new classes of game experiences. And then there's a bunch of key strategic decisions and investments in CPU and GPU and NPU stuff to get there. But I think the most interesting thing is that they very clearly want to utilize the cloud heavily in their next console. Whether that means doing it in a Microsoft Flight Sim way, which is like streaming data in real time to the game through the cloud, or if it's like something more like a handheld where it uses the cloud to play games. I don't know, and we don't know because those documents don't go into that. But if you look ahead to 2028, Xbox has a clear vision where the cloud is a major factor of their brand.
I mean, they just had a whole court battle with the UK over it, so
still having that, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess so.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like that was their whole plan for this one too. So it's just like, okay, more of the same plan, I guess. You know, I guess more robust, more built out. But like the Series X was largely, and Series S, I feel like, I don't know, for years now, their whole thing has been Game Pass and the cloud, and it sounds like that is just gonna be their continued plan.
I wonder if we'll get more games that directly use the cloud for like their design, because like I think the only game that still did it or was like hyped for it was Crackdown 3. Like, remember the pitch for that game where they were showing it like whatever E3 it was during its long development, and they were like, hey, look at the way these buildings fall. This is only possible because of the cloud, baby. And that was like the big selling point. And I don't know if that ever actually like came to fruition in the full release.
That wasn't in the game at all.
Okay, I was like, I beat the game, and it was so far removed. I was like, I don't even remember if this is still in here or not. But it's like, do you think we get more of that by this point, of more studios being
false
like,
promises?
Exactly. Yes.
We'll probably get some more of those. Yeah.
Like, oh, the next, I don't know, Halo, we're gonna use cloud processing because this is like what the console is now. So now we can render a gazillion million grunts through the power of the cloud, baby. You know,
I mean, I don't know. Show me some practical application.
I still think it's all fluff.
To me. You might as well be like, we're throwing sparkles at this one. It's like, okay, like what does that mean?
I'm with you, Kyle.
Cloud computing. Like my save files on the cloud. That's convenient. I take advantage of that a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
No, I'm absolutely with you. I think I'm like, my eyes glaze over when I hear about the cloud in big
praise
letters.
be to the cloud, of course.
Yeah, please.
Don't want to anger the cloud.
We all bow down to the cloud. Cloud, Azure. I'm like, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's so far off too.
I'd be excited about. Here's what I want from the next console. All right. Practically, I want to be able to set my controller on the console, and it charges wirelessly. All right. I want that kind of tech. You know what else I want?
Actually, that's not bad.
On your arm?
On my arm specifically, yes. I want a augment. I'm gonna get the Sandeva Stein.
It's like a attachment, like you get a little wrist thing.
Yes, the Xbox Sandeva Stein. I'll have Game Pass on the go. And
make a dual disc.
Dual disc.
I actually do genuinely love that idea, Mark, Alex. Just like drop. You're done for playing. You just drop your controller on there. It charges overnight.
Right?
That's smart.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, Probably, maybe the biggest news of this is that Microsoft still plans to make consoles by 2028. Because I feel like every console generation is supposed to be the last one, right? Of like, okay, after this, it's going to be all digital cloud stuff, or it's going to be VR, or it's going to be brain implants. We're getting away from plastic boxes, but at least for like going into 2030, it seems like at least Microsoft's still like, nah, we're going to put a box out there.
Yeah, I never buy that. I think as long as we're getting new smartphones every single year, we're going to be getting a new console every 8 years. Like, companies like to sell new things. People like buying them. It's just the cycle.
It's exciting, man.
Yeah,
like, I don't want that to go away. You know,
maybe it's probably most significant to that it's Microsoft, because I feel like of the three, they were the most likely to get away from boxes, because their whole pitch with the last like 5-6 years or so have been like, the Xbox brand rather than the individual box of like, hey, all your games work across Xbox family. Who cares if you buy a Series X? It can run on the S or Xbox One. We don't care what you buy. We just want you in our ecosystem. So that just felt like it would lend itself more towards like a more sort of like nebulous platform in the future of like, I don't know, it's not even. We just have one Xbox or one platform. It's on your TVs now. You don't need to buy a box. Just buy the Xbox TV. It's all there. You just download them. So yeah, I mean, if they're still doing boxes, then it's like, oh, I guess the other two likely are too. 'Cause Sony and Microsoft or Sony and Nintendo have always been pretty console like focused, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go. I guess breathe a sigh of relief for now. Obviously, things change all the time, so who knows? But for people that were worried that we're going to get away from that in the near future, apparently not. It seems like, but
yeah,
I do want to play Oh no, go ahead, Wes.
I was gonna say, on that note, there's another document that I didn't include in my story, but The Verge has it, and they kind of dive more into the specs behind it. But it's a timeline from fiscal year 23 to 2030. And it basically shows console first and device gamers kind of plateauing. It rises from like, I don't know, 35 million to 40 million. And then above that is another notch for PC first gamers, which are people who are prefer gaming on PC. That rises a little bit, but the main rise from 23 to 30 on their document is cloud first gamers, which they describe as smart TV, streaming stick apps, low end PCs, and limited mobile only use. So it's pretty clear that like from here on out, the thing that they're looking to increase the most is cloud gaming in some capacity. I don't think that means they're dropping console players or PC players. I think they're just kind of seeing, we've kind of hit our margin there. We've tapped out that market. Then the next market is getting, the people who don't play Xbox to hook up a controller to their Samsung TV and play those games. And that seems to be their path forward, which is interesting considering they're also planning a console in 2028.
Yeah. And if you live in the UK, those cloud games will be brought to you by Ubisoft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Man.
It's so weird.
I know.
What is the full context there? I know I kind of...
For the Ubisoft thing?
Yeah, like what I vaguely know what you guys are joking about here.
They didn't get the green light for the Activision Blizzard acquisition in the UK. So they've basically gotten rid of their original proposal and they're moving forward with a new one. And Microsoft is saying, let us buy this company and we will move our Activision Blizzard rights basically to Ubisoft for cloud gaming. So in the UK only, presumably Ubisoft will handle the rights and the finances and the money of Activision Blizzard games streaming there. Okay. Because their concern was Microsoft, the UK's concern was Microsoft should not be handling the cloud gaming of Activision Blizzard because of monopoly and all that stuff. So now Ubisoft's going to handle it for some reason.
For some reason.
Ubisoft just doing them a solid.
Yeah.
I guess we'll help. Yeah.
Like the money's still going to get to Microsoft. I guess Ubisoft just gets to take a little chunk out of it.
Like we're not a monopoly. See, they're involved.
Our
buddy and it's just like the camera pans over to Ubisoft and they're just like, bro, I'm just here.
It's like we just stepped into the room and then we were like assaulted with this idea. We were just walking by.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
They were like, whatever publisher steps in the room, we're just gonna say, "Can you do this for us?" It just happened to be Ubisoft. This is why Prince of Persia remake's taking so long. Well, actually, speaking of which, I'm sorry, I know you're trying to move on, but real quick, I want to play a quick game. 2028, right? This is when this console is allegedly around. It's gonna come out. I'm gonna name a few games, and I want your yay or nay or whether or not they'll be out by the time this new console hits.
Okay.
All right. Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Oh,
nope.
No.
Okay. Half-Life 3.
Nope.
Kingdom Hearts 4.
Yes.
Yes.
Alex, you haven't sprung. You're just pondering.
I'm thinking about
Beyond Good and Evil 2.
I'm thinking about the first one still and whether or not I can say something. Yeah. Okay. Yes. What was the last one?
Oh, the second
Kingdom
one
Hearts
was
4.
The last
that's
one was
the one I
Kingdom
meant
Hearts
yes
4.
to. Yeah.
Okay, and I said Half-Life 3 for the second one.
No, yeah, whatever's in the future for Half-Life, there is a future, I believe. I still don't think it's going to be called 3.
Would you say
be Alex 2?
A new Half-Life game in general, like a brand.
I think there'll be a new
Half-Life
Half-Life game. Yeah, I just don't think it'll be called Half-Life 3.
Okay.
I'd love to be
what
wrong.
about Astral Chain 2? Before 2028, what do we think?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll say yes.
Right?
Yeah. Cool. That means it's happening. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And I guess lastly, Elder Scrolls 6.
No.
Do we think it's 2026, 2027, or do you think it goes? Do you think it's like an exclusive for whatever that next console is?
I'm gonna say yes.
Do you think it skips this generation, basically?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like it won't be Series X at all.
Yes, I think so.
I think it'll be cross-platform.
Okay.
Like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Type of
Like
situation.
kind of in the Microsoft way of like, yeah, it's on everything. It's just Xbox. Like that kind of way. Yeah.
but it'll like run really poorly on like last gen.
I mean,
it doesn't have access
apparently
to the
Starfield
cloud.
runs well on the S.
No, I'm just joking about the last bit, but I think it would be like a cross. I could see it being like a cross generation, like bridging the gap.
Okay. And I guess actually one last one I thought of. Do you think Game Pass will still be a thing in 2028?
Yeah.
It'll be a lot more expensive, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The moat has been cleared.
It's gonna be a bloodbath.
The war of 2028. Watch out, baby. It's coming.
Which house do you align with?
Oh boy.
The true console wars. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Marcus, you've been playing it. We're an hour into the show. Let's talk about a video game we've actually played this week.
Yeah, I went to Los Angeles last week for a big preview event of kind of the first hands-on of Rebirth. I got to go to Square Enix's office and play 2 different demos. The first was a more linear slice that was a flashback to it was the Mount Nibel, however you want to pronounce it, sequence where I played as Cloud and Sephiroth. And then the second demo was in a slice of the open world that was like set just outside the city of Junon. And my big takeaway is, hey, that game's still really fun. I'm a Final Fantasy VII fan. I really enjoyed Remake. I love what they did with the combat system of sort of the combination of the stylish action with like turn-based elements. I think it still works here. It was a little bit of an adjustment because I'm still playing through 16, which is like pure action pretty much. But it didn't take long to get back into it. And I'd say the big takeaways, and I also should mention I got to interview the leads behind the game afterwards for a magazine piece coming out. So I got to talk to the creative director, Tetsuya Nomura. I got to talk to Yoshinori Kitase, who's the producer, and then I got to talk to Naoki Hamaguchi, who's the director of Rebirth, and have them answer some burning questions I have had about this game, and I think a lot of people have had, which was nice. So the big new combat twist right away is there's these new attacks called synergy attacks, and they're basically let you combine the 2 party members to do like a kind of a co-op attack, almost like kind of Chrono Trigger-esque. So with the
you have my attention. I stepped out for a second to go get some more water, not because I'm not excited about Final Fantasy VII, but because I needed some. But Chrono Trigger, please go on.
So in the Mount Nibel section, I got to play as Cloud and Sephiroth, who I could switch between. And their synergy attack was this cool move called, I believe, Dual Blade Dance. And once you build up enough ATB guides, you can select it. And it's just them doing this really flashy, insane sort of like sword attack. It's like really cinematic where like the camera zooms in on them both as they got their swords out and they're like, yeah, we're going to do it. And then they just go to town on an enemy. There's like multiple combinations depending on what, your party looks like, which encourages you to experiment with different loadouts because you're like, oh, I want to see what Red 13 and Tifa, what are their synergy attacks, or Aerith and Cloud, I don't know. And also what's nice about this is that now you can save party loadouts and you can switch between them on the fly. So instead of going into the menu every time you're like, oh, I want to put Tifa in and do this, you can just make like 3 different loadouts of like, okay, this is my Cloud Barrett Tifa loadout, this is my Cloud Red 13 Aerith loadout, and then in game you just hit one button and then it instantly switches to that party configuration. So you can just be like, yeah, it's seamless. They just appear on the field. I mean, you see everyone with you at all times. You're just kind of roaming around, like they're all just running around, but you just see their names appear in like the command list, so like, okay, Barrett's in.
I remember some element of the first game, the first remake. God, this is always forever going to be confusing. At the end, that was like really confusing, where I was like swapping materia around between, and you kept changing between different groups. Like you got split up at the end. Do you remember?
Right, in the Shenra.
Yeah,
building?
I wonder if that kind of thing would help with that, like having loadouts. If they're forcing you to sort of like lock into certain people. Anyway, that was a thing that really soured me at the end of that game. I was like, this is annoying.
Yeah, it made it nice in the open world section because of the synergy attacks. They're like, okay, I'm going to stick with the configuration they gave me, see what their synergy attacks on, and then just hit a button while I'm roaming around. But all right, I'm going to see what the other loadout is, because they had I couldn't change the loadouts in the demo. They had like 3 prepared for me. But I was just kind of shifting around, like, all right, let's see what these ones do. But they're really cool, and I said it's a cool way to encourage you to mess around with different party loadouts. You still got your limit breaks and stuff. Sephiroth, his limit break, he's got of course the Octaslash, and I will say playing as Sephiroth is appropriately almost like broken. How powerful he is. Yeah. Like I think in the demo he's like 4 or 5 levels ahead of Cloud. But like he feels like he's like 10 or 15, because like playing as him felt like a cheat code, and I think that was the intent for that segment, because I won't get into spoilers about what happens in the Nibel section, but this is in the past when Sephiroth is still like part of Soldier and is like, oh, he's the legendary war hero, he's really good, whereas you see Cloud is like the inexperienced rookie, and Sephiroth sort of mentoring him and sort of like coaching him on how to be a better fighter and all that good stuff. And it shows when you play as Sephiroth, because he's like, hey, let me show you how it's done. And then he gets in there and you just hit a few buttons and he's just like eviscerating everyone with his sword. And he feels so much fun to play, to where I kind of just stuck with him for the most part. His magic attacks are great. He's fun. And I like his dodge too, because he kind of does this teleporting warp, so you can just like warp into people's faces from like far away, and then also sort of like get back if he needs to. But Cloud still plays pretty much identically. Like he's got the 2 sort of like sword modes, but like the more offense heavy one and the more kind of like slower, but he does like the heavy attack one. I forget the names of them. I had access to all of his special attacks, or at least the ones that they gave me, like Braver and like triple cut and whatever, all that stuff.
So are they not doing the thing where they like depower everybody?
So
and then you have to go back and earn it?
The short answer is yes, they are. I asked them this when I asked the Square devs when I was interviewing them, of like, hey, is there any sort of data transfer between Remake and Rebirth? Because like even though it's a sequel, just because of the nature of it, they're cutting up what was a singular game. It just feels like more natural. Like I could carry my materia over, right? All my weapons and stuff, because I really took a long time to get all that. And they said no, because they view Rebirth as a standalone game. Even though it obviously is continuing the story, they wanted to stand on its own. I mean, there was even that Q&A with the co-director where he said like, nah, you don't need to play Remake to play Rebirth. We got you. Which I still think is kind of an insane statement.
Yeah.
But
I mean, as from just like a player level, honestly, I don't mind. Like, I would rather kind of get a chance to start over than be like, wait, I have all this material. I got all this. How does this work? I got to remember all this stuff. Yeah, I don't really want that, so I'm okay with that. But aren't there story choices that you make in that game that are pretty subtle in terms of like your relationship with Tifa and Aerith? Like, wouldn't that stuff carry forward, or am I misremembering?
The first remake?
Yeah.
I don't think you get to make choices necessarily.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I just remember the stuff with Wall Market with them, where you kind of choose like which one you. But I don't know if that has like a bearing beyond that segment,
right?
You know?
Yeah, I think there's there's fun things to see different characters and different dresses and who gets captured and stuff. But I think like the meta story of it all is definitely Square Enix's hand. Like they're making those choices, I feel like. Did you see any swirling ghost things in Rebirth?
Not swirling ghost things, but I did see people in hoods. Like the kind of hooded people that you saw in Midgar. Like I did see them hanging out in front, like near Junon in the open world part. Didn't really interact with them. It's because it's kind of out of context. They're just kind of hanging out there. But yeah, they were there. And I will say, to go back to the data transfer stuff, Nomura did tell me that even though data doesn't transfer, if you have saved data from Remake or Intergrade, you will get a special summon materia at the beginning of the game. So you are getting something if you've played it. He didn't say what the summon would be, but at least
Fat Chocobo. Come on, Fat Chocobo.
I mean, speaking of chocobos, in the open world segment, I did a lot of chocobo riding because you can ride chocobos all over the place. You can just call them up, and not only do you get to ride them, but you get to see your whole party riding them. And I'm just gonna say that the image of Red 13 on top of a chocobo is maybe the funniest thing I've seen in a video game in a long time. And I like actively sort of like snorted at it because I did not expect it. And I was like focusing on it for a while. Like I was like spinning the camera to see like, how is he like sitting up there on his little
How does he sit? Is he sitting like a human, or is he like on all fours? Or
like imagine putting a cat on top of like a dog. And how awkward it's kind of hanging on, basically. It's kind of like
I'm going to do this after this podcast.
There's a list for the magazine that we could do. That's like we could get a screenshot of Yoshi riding a horse and Mario at the Olympic Games and like Red 13 riding a chocobo. Like I don't know what that list is called, but like rideable video game animals riding other rideable video game animals.
It's weird because nobody rides Red 13, but like when you look at him on there, it just looks like he shouldn't be there. Like someone like had to awkwardly push him up there. And it's like, I don't know, he's pretty fast on his own, isn't he? He probably doesn't need a chocobo, but I guess he wants, you don't want to feel left out.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're riding around your chocobos. You can decorate your chocobos, which is nice. There's like when you set up your chocobo
armor.
Yeah, you can give them little armor and hats and stuff. Mine had a little newspaper boy hat he was rocking, and a little like sort of like denim armor, I guess is the best way I can describe it. But he looked like he should be passing out some New York Times in the street corner. And like extra. Chocobo, I don't know. That's how they talk. But that's how they talk. For those Gashile greens. But the open world stuff, at least the segment I played, it was pretty big. It was probably comparable or maybe bigger in size to like Final Fantasy 16's kind of like open areas. I don't know I wasn't clear on like if it's the same sort of approach across the board, because they have been touting like, oh, this is like I said, like there's bigger open world like areas in this game since you're going to be going through between different cities now. But at least that one area, it was like very pretty. And actually, I should probably say that right off the bat. It's like, this being a PS5 exclusive, this game is gorgeous, which the first game was too. But just the amount of detail and everything, like you can see the money basically pouring out of everything. Like I could see dollar bills coming out of the monitor as I was playing it, just because of how just like the fidelity of everything and the lighting, like, and of course all the combat and special attacks. You're like, yeah, this is I would love someone to spend this amount of money on me. But like the open world stuff was fun. There were some challenges out there where there was these special like hunts that I don't have context for, but there was like 4 of them, and when you wander into a certain area, it'll trigger like, hey, there's a creature here, you should kill it. And there's like this voice telling you to gather combat data, kind of like the AI from Exoprimal, where he's like, we really need some valuable data on this like chimera that you're fighting. And it kind of sounded like Yuffie, but it's not, because I ran into her later in the demo. So I asked them about that, and they wouldn't tell me who that character was. So mystery there. But you fight them, and then you can just kill them and get the reward. But there's objectives that you can complete of like, oh, if you stagger them, or you pressure them, or if you beat them within a time limit, like all these fights have a time limit, then you'll get more rewards for doing it. And so you can do those for fun. They were fine. You know, it's just an excuse to be like, well, I like this battle system, so I'm gonna, you know, engage with it and maybe try to hit these objectives and, you know, see what party configuration does that the best. Came across a chocobo farm. A lot of chocobo in this demo now that I'm looking back on it, which was nice. And in terms of the story stuff, I don't, like, again, fans probably having a decent idea of like where the Junon stuff is, but speaking to Nomura, because actually he did tell me, because I asked them what stretch of the story does Rebirth cover, because, you know, they were pretty clear from the beginning with Remake that it was just going to be Midgar, but they haven't really said anything about Rebirth. But Nomura did confirm that it's going to run up to the end of the Forgotten Capital, which is also known as the City of the Ancients, which, if you play the original, you know that's a very significant area. And but he also stressed, and he was trying to be very clear, he's like, you know, events are not going to unfold the same way or in the same order. So keep that in mind. Which
Remake like started going off the rails a little bit, but the implication here is that like this is where things split, I guess, in a big way, probably.
Yeah, which you can tell from the trailers, just from like the presence of Zack, like how heavily he's featured in there, and you're like, okay, that's weird if you know the events of Crisis Core and Original 7. So what's going on there? But yeah, he was saying like, yeah, you know, it's going to end at the Forgotten Capital, but if you think you know what's going to lead up to that, maybe you don't. Maybe stay tuned. I don't know. So, but it was, yeah, he did shake his fist at the camera. But I mean, it's good to know to kind of at least have the sort of stopping point already established, because that's still a lot of game. You know, we saw in the trailer like the gold saucer and all the mini games and stuff, which they mentioned specifically, because I asked them about like, oh, you know, was there anyone in particular they were most excited about? And they brought up the Rufus Shinra inauguration game. If you guys got to that, have you guys played the original or beaten it? I know, Kyle, you've started it.
Yeah, I've never beaten it, but yeah.
Okay, yes. Wes, do you know what I'm talking about? The initial,
yes.
Okay, the parade thing.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about how they reworked that, and how now you're gonna have to, as Cloud, go around and choose which like troops join that, and depending on who you pick to be in the parade, it's gonna play out differently. But it sounds like it's gonna be a lot more involved than sort of the kind of rhythm music thing that it was in the original game. But that sounds fun. And one of the things I was happy with that trailer was how much, like, how that game continues to preserve the goofy stuff about Final Fantasy VII. Mm-hmm. And speaking to the team, they said that was really important. They're like, yeah, no, we recognize that's a lot of the game's charm, is just how, you know, those segments that doesn't take everything so seriously and how silly it gets. And so they're like, yeah, we were really excited, and, you know, to go back and revisit some of those weird little mini games that we had. But yeah, other than that, like, it wasn't like I played about an hour of the game total between the two demos. Like the Mountain Idol demo was pretty short, with cutscenes. Like, you know, it ended with a big boss fight that I took down with Cloud and Sephiroth. That was pretty fun. And then the open world stuff, it just sort of ended with me going into Junon and doing another boss fight where I got to meet up with Yuffie and, you know, interact with some of the residents. So it's kind of hard to say like how it all flows together, because it was just two slices. But like I said, it's fun. It is more Final Fantasy VII Remake with some new wrinkles with the synergy attacks. And God, I'm trying to make sure I'm not forgetting another sort of attack things. You still had your limit breaks and all the individual character special attacks. There was a lot to juggle just between all the different special attacks and trying to figure out like, okay, what's the hierarchy? Like, which ones like your limit breaks are your big ones, but are the synergy attacks better? Should I use my gauge for that? And then I have like each character's own attacks, but they're all fun to play. I'd forgotten how much fun Tifa is when I switched to her, and you're like, oh yeah, you're just like wailing on foods with her punch combos. I forgot she was like my favorite character outside of Cloud in the original game. So
yeah, she's
still a lot of fun. Red 13, I should mention, is a blast because this is the first game that he's playable in, because he was kind of just there in the first game, but he's got his like claw attacks, and he has this like this special like vengeance mode that he can go into, where he pretty much just becomes like basically better for a period of time. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. It's shaping up pretty well, and I'm very excited to see how the narrative plays out, like as I imagine everyone is, see what changes and what stays the same.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited for all you Final Fantasy sickos out there.
Did you play Remake?
I did. I'm just not a Final Fantasy person. I didn't beat it or anything, but I played probably 10 hours, and then kind of got to a lull in the story, and it was like, you should go do some side quests and go check this stuff out in between like big beats, you know?
The kids.
Yep.
Yeah. The answer to that is no. Just do the story.
Yeah, and I just fell off, and I was like, I like it. I respect it. It's just I don't have that fanfare for the series, like some people do. But totally excited to see how they're kind of getting weird with those remakes.
Oh, one last thing I will mention is I asked them why the game was 2-disc and what that actually meant, and they did confirm that it's like 2 gameplay discs. So the game is apparently 150 gigs total, so it's huge. And they knew that from the start because they wanted it to be this big, massive thing. And apparently they decided early on that it would necessitate 2 discs, because they were like, oh yeah, if we tried to put this on 1 disc, we would have to cut stuff, and we didn't want to do that. So we're like, oh, I guess 2 discs is the answer. But if you buy it physically, you will not be switching discs, just because of how the PS5 like installing games works. It's basically you're going to install both discs from the beginning, and then after that, because you'll install the full game. But then after that, you just need to use one of them, which will sort of be like the main disc.
Okay.
So there won't be a now switch to disc 2.
Yeah.
Section.
I mean, that's how I think Remake was 2 discs, wasn't it?
I think it was a download disc though.
Yeah.
Like you have to put one in to get data from it, and then you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, that's how Red Dead 2 works.
Yeah.
As well. But yeah.
But yeah, it sounded like this one, it was like there are 2 gameplay disc, but one is also sort of an installing disc, as opposed to just one being installed and one being the game. So, but yeah, total size is like 150 gigs. So watch out. Prepare your hard drives now.
Delete some Call of Duties.
Definitely.
I think just one Call of Duty actually.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, one mode on a Call of Duty. Well, I want to come back to you, Marcus, in a second to talk about Spider-Man 2, but Wes, you have been playing and reviewing Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty for Game Informer. This new DLC is, of course, launching alongside the 2.0 update for the game that brings a ton of changes, and it really feels like it's finally Cyberpunk's time to shine, ? Because I don't know how the game is. You got to tell me.
Yeah, the short answer to your question is yes, it is. I played Cyberpunk 2077 at launch, and I was lucky enough to have secured a new gen console at the time. So I actually had a really good time with the game. I thought it was a great RPG, and I put 100 hours into it, and I really enjoyed it. Obviously, a lot of its problems happened around launch because they promised a bunch of stuff, and the PS4 and Xbox One versions were basically unplayable. So unplayable that PlayStation took it off their storefront. And since then, they've kind of been on a path towards getting back the trust of players, and they've released a good bit of updates to improve the game, to add content to the game. They had a big Edge Runners update to add stuff from that anime that's very good on Netflix that everybody should watch. And now 2.0 is out by the time you're listening to this, which is kind of the culmination of all these massive updates. This is a big rework of the game, revamps perks and skill trees and cyberware and blah, blah, blah. If you haven't checked in on Cyberpunk in a while, 2.0 feels very different, and the game's mechanics will feel almost new to you compared to the original. And then Phantom Liberty launches next week on the 26th, and it is basically a story expansion, like kind of just like a classic CDPR expansion where 2.0 is adding the mechanics and all the fancy new stuff. Phantom Liberty is a really great story expansion, and there's some new stuff, new weapons, new cars and things like that. But for the most part, it feels like more Cyberpunk 2077, which is a lot better now because of 2.0. So reviewing it was interesting because I was trying to like piece together what 2.0 did for my enjoyment of the game, what Phantom Liberty did for my enjoyment of the game, and then how those two mesh together. Since when people play Phantom Liberty, they are playing Cyberpunk 2077 2.0.
Okay.
But long story short, Phantom Liberty is a lot of fun. I gave it a 8.5. You can read my review on GameInformer.com. I don't think it's like necessarily better than the rest of Cyberpunk 2077's narrative, but it slots in really nicely, and you can play it at pretty much any point in the game. You don't have to advance too far into a new save to get to it. If you're at the very end of the game, I started my Phantom Liberty run on a save that happened right before the final mission of the base game, and I did all of Phantom Liberty, and it was fine. It didn't feel out of place or anything.
How do you access it? Because I always feel like DLC can be tricky about like, is there a person you have to talk to, or do you get a call that says, "Hey, Phantom Liberty"?
Yeah, you get a call. You basically, I believe. I mean, it's Kyle. You played it, right? It's a call, right?
Yeah. Well, because this is actually a good question, because the way I did it, Marcus, is I accidentally, I downloaded 2.0 because we got like early access, and I thought I had downloaded Phantom Liberty, but had not. So I booted up the game, and I was like, oh, I can respec everything. I got to go to a Ripper dock to see all this. So it's like, okay, this all feels new. And I'm like driving around. I'm like, how come I haven't gotten a call to go to Dogtown yet? Like what, where? And I was getting that annoyed thing where I was like, DLC is hard to access. But then I realized I hadn't downloaded Phantom Liberty yet. So I closed the game, downloaded it, and re-uploaded it. And literally, like, I took one step, and this woman called Songbird calls you, and she's like, you know, all Metal Gear Solid about it. She's like, you got to save the president of the United States. And I'm like, okay, what's your address? I
guess I'll get on
there as soon as I can. But it finds you very easily. This isn't like, you know, download the DLC, then drive to this obscure place and find this. It's like, no, they're going to call you and be like, come find us. And they'll do it. It'll get added to your list of missions pretty easily.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then it takes you to Dogtown, which technically was always on the map of Night City, but it was not accessible. And when you play the game, you realize, because Dogtown is like an independently controlled district within Night City, it basically has like a militaristic dictator who used to work for the new United States of America government. And you even have to, like, there's one entry and exit out of the city, and you go in and they like scan your car or your vehicle and give you like the approval to go in and out. So it's very clearly like, this is how we added Dogtown to Night City. But it's a really, really cool district. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like it's like slums mixed with, contrasted with like Las Vegas-esque cheap luxury. Like there's casinos that are run down and stuff, but like the richest of the rich still, you can go to like floor 90 of this casino, and it's this awesome, super fancy, gold-plated place to hang out with all these rich people. But then like on the ground, it's pretty dire for a lot of people. And it's not like a safe place to be. And there's like a private military roaming around, and people aren't happy, blah, blah, blah. I really like the district of Dogtown. But yeah, the story it's good. Like, it's great. It's exactly what they said it was, which is a spy thriller. And the characters are fun. Idris Elba is great. I think he's a better actor in Cyberpunk than Keanu Reeves. I'm not saying Keanu Reeves' as Johnny Silverhand is bad, but like, Solomon Reed is easier to take a little more seriously, because you can tell Idris Elba approached this role a little more seriously. But I like them both, and it's fun to see. They do a good job of grabbing an actor who can actually translate well into video games, unlike, say, Megan Fox in Mortal Kombat 1.
Just to pull
which I've seen clips of, and but yeah, it's another good story in Night City. I didn't necessarily think it was going to be this like mind-blowing experience, and it really wasn't. This is a fun 20-hour arc for my V2 experience, and I had a good time. However, it adds a new ending to Cyberpunk 2077 that I think is like phenomenal. I really love this ending. To get it, I luckily had multiple saves going in Phantom Liberty, because I beat Phantom Liberty the way I wanted to, with my V and how I was role playing her, which is basically just Lucy from Cyberpunk Edgerunners, with the David jacket that you got to go secure in Night City. And I was like, okay, that was fun. That ending was cool. And then the game's just kind of like, all right, time to get back to murking it up and continuing with your story. And it kind of just felt like, oh, it's just a mission that was over. So I went back to a save and I chose some other decisions. And it's clear that like that's what they want you to do, which I didn't personally like story-wise. But I did that, and I got a few more missions that kind of add an entire new ending to Cyberpunk 2077 that caught me by surprise. It's very unlike the other endings, and it's very reflective, almost like CDPR looking back on this journey as a whole. And it's a really cool ending for people who like the genre of Cyberpunk. It's very different from the other endings, and it's like heartfelt and heartbreaking, and it's long and drawn out, and very memorable. Very, very, very stoked about that ending. That ending like gave Phantom Liberty like an extra little bump for me, because I was just very blown away by it. I didn't expect it at all, and it caught me by surprise. So definitely like do some save scumming in Phantom Liberty when it feels like you need to do some save scumming, because you'll want to go back and change choices.
And then to be clear, like asking for myself, like I should beat Phantom Liberty before I go pursue this new ending, is what you're saying? I have to? You have to beat
right. Phantom Liberty before you'll roll credits on Phantom Liberty before you can even access this new ending. And it all happens. The new ending comes quick.
Cool. No, that's exciting. I remember the ending of Cyberpunk 2077 being interesting, but not like super impactful or memorable.
Yeah, well, because it's kind of just like, I don't
really remember what happened, which it does not speak highly of.
Yeah, so. You can go a few routes, but it always kind of ends with like, you're a legend. Wow, you're so cool. You're a cool merc. This one's very, very different. For anyone playing Phantom Liberty, when you beat it afterwards, you'll know right away whether or not you are on the path to that new ending. If it feels like if you don't get another mission after rolling credits, you need to go back and pick some different choices, and it'll be very clear which choices to make in order to get the new ending. But it is worth getting this new ending. It's very easy to get. I'm just talking vaguely because I don't want to spoil anything, but like it kind of is like a binary choice, and one gets you the new ending, one does not.
It asks you, do you want a better ending? Yes.
Yeah. So just do some save scumming.
How are you enjoying this game on a scale of 1 to 10? And then we'll tell you which ending you should.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's the survey.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more Cyberpunk. If you haven't played Cyberpunk because of all the drama and disaster at launch, I think you should definitely jump in and give it a try. This is the game they intended to launch 3 years ago. Good. And as someone who already liked Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty adds more Cyberpunk, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's well worth playing.
It is my next game after I finish Baldur's Gate and Zelda.
So your 2025 game.
Yeah, so I'm close on Baldur's Gate. I'm close on Zelda, and then after that, I'm going to start up Phantom Liberty. I'm gonna start from the beginning, because I had, I think, like 8 hours on Steam, and I really liked what I played in 2020. But I was just like, I'm gonna come back when this is in a better state.
I'm in the same boat as you, Alex.
Yeah.
On that note, I might have an opinion feature-esque piece up on the site by the time you're listening to this. But in case I don't, I do think if it's possible and if you have the time, it's worth it to start a new save for Cyberpunk to experience 2.0 and Phantom Liberty. Kyle and I are working on a piece that's like, here's all the things you need to remember, because when you jump into Phantom Liberty, they assume that you've just been playing this game nonstop, and there's a big learning curve. Not to mention,
simple one that for me that Wes and I were talking about was like, just remembering how to put your weapon away is like crucial. Like I played the game in preview and didn't remember how to put my weapon away. It caused a lot of problems, and I killed a lot of characters that I did not need to kill. So like things like that,
Yeah. So yeah, if you start over, you're going to be introduced to all the 2.0 stuff at a casual pace like the game's intended to. Phantom Liberty will probably slot in a little easier. Like for me, I was at the very end of the game, so it is kind of funny to be ramping up towards the ending, and then I'm like, well, actually, let me go to Dogtown for 20 hours and see what's going on there. Yeah, if you have the time, I would recommend a fresh save. But if you don't, Phantom Liberty still works as intended.
Awesome. Well, Marcus, take us home. Let's talk about some Spider-Man 2. You went hands-on. We've got a new gameplay today episode up if people want to see it in action. But yeah, tell us all about it.
Yeah. Again, I got to play about 90 minutes of it. You can watch our NGT up on our YouTube channel. But I played the demo was set like a few hours into the game. Peter had the black suit already and his Iron Spider arms, and Miles is I guess he's just Miles, but he's there too. And yeah, that game is
just Spider-Man's got his black spider, and Miles is there. He's keeping up. He's doing stuff. We're proud of him.
He's got new hair. He's got a new hairstyle. Looks pretty good on him, But I mean, his special thing is his venom attacks, which he had in the last game. He's got some new ones, but that's his thing. But yeah, that game is fun as hell. As someone that enjoyed those first two games and is also just a big Spider-Man fan in general, I did not want to stop playing this game because everything just feels like a either improved or like tightened up version of what they had done with the previous game. The combat still feels good, but feels a little tightened up where it's still that acrobatic dance of jumping around and dodging and doing these cool finishing moves, but it feels a little less, I guess, flaily is probably the best word I could describe. And a lot of that is because you have a new parry now, where like in other video games, if you time an attack to where just before it lands, you hit like the right shoulder button, you'll do a parry move. So like in Peter's case, the symbiote will kind of form a shield and then just kind of explode, and then it'll knock enemies back. And if you do it for the special attacks where the enemy will kind of glow yellow and then red back before you hit, that's sort of your cue of you should parry these. You can parry anything technically, but if you parry these attacks, they'll be knocked in their butt pretty good, and you can get in there and get some licks. So maybe don't dodge these if you can. I think it took some getting used to because those games are so dodge focused where you're just kind of trained to just spam hitting circle repeatedly just to not get hit by distant enemies or anything that might be hitting. So they're well, why wouldn't I if I can just do that? But
are we talking Arkham level of counter here, which is like Arkham's combat is like all counters.
Well, I mean,
that's not quite there.
Well, I mean, Spider-Man, the first two games were pretty much the Arkham combat for the most part.
Close, yeah.
Yeah,
but like you said, but without parries, really, which is a core idea of Arkham, I feel like.
Well, Arkham, it wasn't so much parrying; it was more like it was kind of like a counter. I know that sounds the same. So you weren't knocking them back or stunning them. It was just oh, I blocked your punch and then he punches them. It was kind of like a chain thing. Whereas this is closer to I know Souls is the cliche descriptor, but it's closer to that kind of thing.
Okay.
Oh, boom, and they're whoa, I'm stunned, and then you can get in there and just go to town on them. So that's probably a closer analog, and it makes the fights, especially the boss fight that I did with the lizard, feel a little bit more intimate and more strategic, because you're okay, I'm gonna wait for him to hit me instead of instinctively dodging everything, so I can maybe it's that risk versus reward of I'm putting myself in a line of danger to dish out more danger or damage, I should say. And it feels good. It feels like a natural fit to the existing arsenal. I mean, the biggest the biggest takeaway or the most fun thing is the wingsuit, the web wings.
Yeah, those look so fun.
It's so fun. Web swinging has always been the best part of those games. Just getting around in general. I might wager that I don't think there's any game where it's as fun to get around a big sandbox than the Spider-Man games, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of puts a bullet in that, because being able to switch to flying, or I mean technically gliding, but it feels like you're flying for how far you can go if you really do it well. It just feels like a natural fit that manages to not overshadow web swinging. It doesn't nullify it to where oh, I'll just glide everywhere. Why would I ever swing? Because it's not indefinite, and it does require some skill to remain airborne long enough to where you can kind of go a good while. Like it's kind of got like flight controls a little bit where like you're dipping down in the stick to go up. And, you know, if you dive down and come up again, you'll get the momentum from going down to like shoot back up. And there's like wind tunnels in certain parts of the city that you can aim for to kind of like shoot yourself across like a gap or whatever. But it eliminates the one problem with web swinging where, you know, when you break momentum or you hit the ground, it sucks so bad. Like you just feel like all the wind is out of your sails and you feel like a bad Spider-Man for hitting the ground. And this gets rid of that because it's great for getting over areas either that have low buildings or no buildings like Central Park or like Queens, which is one of the new boroughs. And so you're like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna swing here, then this little patch of like tiny buildings, I'm just gonna glide right over that and then get back to an area with tall buildings and keep going. And on top of that, like even hitting the water is better because, you know, since there's the Hudson River now dividing like Manhattan from Brooklyn and Queens, you know, you're going to be going across the river a lot. So when you hit the water now, the Spider-Man will like ski on top of it for a second. And it kind of gives you a window to, you know, shoot a web and recover. So if you find yourself like screwing up of like, oh, I'm going to hit this water and it's like, no, he'll land on it and do like a little ski thing. And you're like, okay, I'm going to launch off of that and keep gliding or swinging. So again, this game does a better job about preserving the flow of movement. So you're just like making less mistakes all the time. So it's just like, hey.
How does that work in the new Queens and Brooklyn? In Spider-Man Homecoming, one of my favorite scenes is when he's like trying to get away and he's like in the suburbs and he's just like, oh, I can't. So he just runs. I imagine there's not big buildings to swing to in Brooklyn and Queens. Like, how do they tackle that?
Yeah, I didn't spend probably very little time in Brooklyn and Queens. There was one segment in the Hudson that kind of took me there, so I can't say for sure. But like, you know, Manhattan has plenty of like stretches of like, okay, there's not really a lot of big buildings here. And it's kind of the same way of like either you do like that zip line thing where it's like, okay, there's a lamppost, I'm going to zip, launch off of that, and then get airborne to where you can kind of get going. You can still do that. The Hudson also has a bunch of boats everywhere. So even if you don't hit the water, you can zip to a boat and do the same thing. So like there's just like more perches, it feels like, everywhere to be like, okay, you have a launching point somewhere, you know. It just depends on what you want to do. But regardless of how you launch, you can launch into a glide or you can launch into a swing, but either way works. So I would imagine that's pretty much what they got going. But it's got the like the open world stuff is, from what I saw, like similar. Like there's still the random crimes. I did a few of them and they were fine. I don't know how much variety there is. I know that was like a big criticism of at least the first game, is that they all kind of find it samey after a while. So I don't know how they've addressed that. But like the 2 or 3 that I did were like enjoyable. Like they mentioned before, you could switch between either Spider-Man anytime you want outside of like mandatory story moments, and it does the sort of like GTA 5 style, like camera pans over to wherever the other Spider is hanging out, and you might see them doing something kind of funny, like Peter doing sit-ups on the side of the building, and he's like, oh, my turn, I'm gonna go. So I like that. It kind of reminds me actually of like the stuff you would see when you would fast travel in those games when they're on the subway doing random stuff. It's a little bit like that. For people that actually fast traveled in those games.
Did you see them? I think it was Gamer Tag Radio that was talking to them, and they said that sometimes if you're swinging around as Miles, you might see Peter over there swing by or do anything like that. Did you happen to see anything like that happen?
Oh, interesting. No, I did not see that. I didn't hear about that, but that's cool if that's true. But yeah, they were far enough apart from where every time I played where I didn't see the other one. But if that's true, that's neat. But yeah, it's cool so far. I won't touch on like too much of the story stuff that I saw, because I did watch quite a few cutscenes. I did play the lizard chase sequence that we all saw in that demo. That thing's a blast. I mean, it was it was fun to watch, but to actually play it, and yes, it's a lot of like, it's mostly quick time events and like swinging in between, but man, it just nails that spectacle of like that, just the fun of the chase and just dodging things on time and just being like, man, this is just fun. Like, I don't care if it's like more or less a glorified cutscene. I'm having fun doing this. So
turns out all quick time events needed were just way more animations to make them cool.
There's a lot of animation in this game, and it all looks superb.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've always been excited for Spider-Man 2 again, just as a fan, but even more so now, I want to get back in there and just fly around and do cool stuff, which is the one thing those games succeed at, right? If like you feel like Spider-Man and you feel like everything you do is like the coolest thing a person could do.
Awesome. Well, I was gonna kind of wind the show down there. I know I do want to touch on Unity, but I actually might want to save that till next week because we're waiting to hear an official response from Unity regarding some of the rollbacks they're working on.
We can touch on the last thing they said. We'll touch on it here. Is this was September 17th. We have heard you. We apologize for the confusion and angst. The runtime fee policy we announced on Tuesday has caused. We're listening, talking to our team members, community, customers, and partners, and we'll be making changes to the policy. We will share an update in a couple of days. Thank you for your honest and critical feedback, which, we'll see.
There was a Bloomberg report this morning. Right? A Bloomberg report was saying like they are maybe talking about. Actually, I don't have it in front of me. My understanding was maybe the wording I saw was potentially pointing to doing rather than an install fee, like a fixed 4% cap on costs. But yeah, I really do want to dive into that. But we are at almost 2 hours, and Marcus also been playing Mortal Kombat. But just catching you up, the Unity stuff, effectively the TLDR, Unity announced a new runtime fee, which if you don't know what Unity is, it's a game engine. It is the primary competitor of Unreal Engine. I would say probably at least 50% of I think actually they did a study recently and Unity had like a 80-something% market share, whereas Unreal had like 18%. And there's many devs, and the allure of both these engines are they're free to start at least. And like as your game finds success, there are built-in ways for them to make their money back, right? But typically, unless you hit that threshold, there is no associated fees. And so Unity introduced a runtime fee, which when you download a Unity game, you download the game with the Unity engine. You also download the Unity runtime utility, and that costs them money, I guess, to run when people download their games. And so they're talking about introducing a fee every time somebody installs a game. And that there's a lot of miscommunication on their end, allegedly, where they're like, oh no, we didn't mean every install. It's just like one fresh install.
We just said every install.
Yeah.
We didn't mean every install.
Yeah. And so we're going to do, it's just like one install fee per device. But a lot of games are thinking like, okay, well, what if I get on Game Pass and suddenly I'm charged for every single install of my game? That could bankrupt me.
Or like the horrible dark possibility of doing install bombing.
Yeah.
Of like review. Oh, I don't like this game because of a dumb reason. I'm gonna repeatedly uninstall and reinstall it to jack up the studio's fee. Take that.
And ultimately, what it boiled down to was Unity not really honoring their terms of service they've had for years and like retroactively applying this new fee to games I've already released. Like as of January 1st, 2024. This runtime fee was going to be applicable to all games, not just new games. And so you've got developers who, maybe they're only selling their game for $2 and the Unity install fee for them is 20 cents. And let's say that person has a PC, a Steam Deck. There was also a question, what happens if they uninstall it and reinstall it at a later date? You can see how it quickly just everything's lit on fire. There's a lot of distrust. And yeah, so there was a huge uproar. You've got games like Cult of the Lamb threatening to take the game down, taking the game off, not selling it anymore. You've got Among Us out there, Inner Sloth, talking about stuff. Aggro Crab, the people who are making Another Crab's Treasure.
Yeah. Did you see Jeff Keighley chimed in?
No, I didn't. What'd he say?
He chimed in the thread where they basically said, we're sorry, we're going to look into this. And it wasn't a lot, but he just sort of said, show us the changes. Like,
Gotcha.
That's
but
a
it got a
bold
lot of
statement
votes.
from Jeff Vanilla Man Keeley.
Yeah,
It's like the second comment is like, show us the changes. And I was like, well, Jeff weighing in. All right, you heard Daddy Jeff.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk in the game dev circles about switching to Godot, which is a engine that a lot of people use for 2D and 3D.
Which I'd never heard of prior to this discourse.
Yeah, it's an open source.
It's called Godot sometimes too.
Yeah.
There's like different ways to pronounce it.
Yeah. It's an open source game dev or game engine, and then a lot of people are like, hey, maybe I'm going to check out Unreal. The problem with Unreal is like Unity. The reason why people love Unity is because the engine itself it makes it, number one, the constraints of the engine make it easier to, like, if your game runs well in Unity and you're using like the stock tool set, like you aren't having like custom engines on top and stuff, like your thing is going to run well on Switch. It's going to run well on PS4, on Xbox, if it's running well in the engine and all that. And of course, each platform has different optimizations, but people are like, oh, well, I really want to use Unreal because it's got these new, the nanite lighting system, or no, Lumens is the lighting system, which is like really cool lighting. It's got nanite, which is effectively, instead of having to render out different versions of each individual game asset, they're called LODs. And it's like the level of detail in your model. So everybody always starts from a high poly, and then you have to like bake on your meshes and like essentially do a lot of tricks to make it look the same but have way less geometry on it, so it uses less processing power. Unreal Engine has this cool tool where essentially you just put in the high poly model and it does all that automatically, and it saves you a ton of time. The problem is it's harder to make it work on things like Switch. So there's like a lot of talk about engines this week, and bottom line is Unity lost a lot of trust, and they're going to have to gain it back. I personally have been working on a game in Unity, just small little prototypes here and there. Luckily I've been focusing more on like my art, because I knew that like my best strength is like art. And so I've just been focusing on that, and like, okay, I've got like this library of assets I can use to build my game out. And I've had like little prototypes here and there in Unity, but now personally, I downloaded Unreal Engine the other night. I started poking around, and it's just like a weird time, because it's like, man, all the time I bought courses on Unity. I've spent time learning how to script in C#, and I feel like I have a fairly solid understanding of like the Unity engine in terms of like where things are, that kind of thing. And now personally, I'm like, okay, even if they do roll it back, what's to stop them from doing it again? And granted, a lot of these like the runtime fee in particular, you had to sell 200,000 copies or $200,000 in revenue, and also hit like a $200,000 download threshold, which like a lot of people I'm probably not going to hit that on my first game I put out, right? But it's more so just like the question of, okay, well, if my game is out for 10 years and maybe eventually I do hit that threshold and I'm not like actively making games anymore, am I forced to like take my game down, or do I need to start paying this install fee on a game that maybe I'm not really equipped to sell anymore? It's just like all messy, and there was like so many what ifs, and like people need to have concrete data to, forecast their financials and like run a company. And the Unity nonsense has just been just completely messy and foggy and not clear. And
no,
there's a lot of people's whose livelihoods at stake. Like I just do it for a hobby, right? There's like so many game studios who like they have built their company to work around Unity, and it's just a massive pain in the ass. Whatever happens, yeah. But yeah, that's the Unity stuff. I guess we did end up talking about it a bit.
Yeah, right.
All right, take us home, Marcus. Last thing before we end today. Mortal Kombat 1.
Hey,
give us the lowdown.
The hot new release this week, probably.
Yeah.
It probably is the biggest release of the week, actually.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I'll preface this by saying I've only played the story campaign as of recording. I've not finished it yet, but I'm in it. Like, I'm knee deep in it. It's a damn good Mortal Kombat game, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
It's really fun. I don't know if anyone else has started it yet, but I will say right off the bat, as the more I play, I think more and more that this might be the best looking fighting game I have ever seen. Like, it looks absolutely amazing, and not even just as a fighting game. I think it might be one of the best looking games of the year. Like, the attention to detail and the characters, and especially the stages, which, Kyle, you can attest to this because we're playing Mortal Kombat 9 right now for Super Replay, but like the stages, since they have kicked off this sort of like a current era of the series with MK9, have always looked fantastic, like with just so much detail and stuff happening in the back. But this one especially, it's just like there's so many layers, and you're just like, you almost catch yourself kind of just wanting to stare, like, what's going on back there? You end up getting punched in the face. But it is like everything I've seen, it is just like, it is an immaculate looking game, from like the animations and just how creative the attacks and the like fatal blows and the fatalities, of course, look like. It's like, yeah, this is the best looking game they've ever made, and I think it's in the running for like best looking game of the year so far.
All right.
The story so far has been really enjoyable. For those who don't know, this is another soft reboot for the franchise, much like MK9 was, where Fire God Liu Kang has reset the universe in his own image. And so you can start with this one, but it does directly follow the events of 11. Like, the opening cutscene that plays when you start the game straight up has Liu Kang being like, yeah, I became a time god and I erased the old timeline, and this is what I did for this new one, and everything's going to work out this time for sure. Everything's great. And then turns out things aren't so great. And I will say I am... One of my biggest sort of like potential plot holes with this premise was like just seeing more character reveals of like, okay, this is a new universe made by the biggest like kind of the series good guy, and so like, and with the goal of achieving peace. So like, why is there even a Mortal Kombat tournament? Wouldn't you just get rid of all that? And like, why is Shang Tsung and these guys, all these people that gave him such a headache, still here? And I'm happy so far that the story directly addresses that and sort of explains that, like, without spoiling, like, basically despite his best efforts, things are sort of going the way that they maybe not necessarily did before, but kind of yes, of like, oh, I made all these big changes, but there are forces conspiring to try to get back to where we were, and what's up with that? And that's a pretty fascinating hook, because again, he's like, how is this even possible? I did everything from scratch. How is this happening? So I'm glad they're addressing that. It's still kind of weird and a little bit of a bummer that none of the characters are brand new. But they did bring back some pretty obscure like characters, especially from like the 2000s era of like Deadly Alliance, Deception, Armageddon, with like Ashra and Nitara, voiced by Megan Fox, everyone's favorite actress. And I will say, like, I've liked what they've done with them. Like, Ashra in particular is one character where in Deception, I was like, oh, she's fine. But, like, I used her a bit, but, it just didn't stick. I think she's, like, maybe one of my favorite characters in this game now. Just between her design and her combat. Like, her moveset is so much fun. And the story campaign, I think, again, I don't know how it ends, so I can't say it's the best campaign from, like, a writing standpoint. But in terms of a presentation standpoint, I think it's, like, easily the best they've done. Like, you can see all the lessons they've learned since MK9, where like the cinematography and the fight choreography is just so like top notch, to where like you could argue that all of those story modes since MK9 are probably the best Mortal Kombat movies ever. Just on their own. And I think more and more this feels like a really good Mortal Kombat movie that you happen to be playing, because one, the cutscenes can be pretty lengthy. So you are going to be sitting back just watching for a while, but then, and you've commented about this, Kyle, when doing a replay, like, again, that seamless transition to like, oh, we're in a fight now, and then we're out of a fight and we're going back to cinematic. Like, it's still like super impressive. And they've also done a good job of sort of, from like a writing standpoint, justifying why you're in a fight. Like, one of the sillier things, especially in MK9, which was the first one they did this, where it was like, I don't know, a character walks up and you're just fighting, basically. You're like, why are we in a fight? Like, there was that moment in the replay where Jade, like, we're in an area that we shouldn't be in, and we're not there for any particular reason. And then Jade walks up and is like, hey, this is a restricted area. And she very politely says it, and Jax is like, we're fighting. And, and they're like, you could have just been like, oh, my bad, we'll leave. But it's like, well, there has to be a fight now. There's a lot less of that I'm finding in this, where it's like all the fights build naturally to where like, oh, okay, there's a lot of meaning behind this blood battle that we're in. Also, just the combat itself, like the feel of the combat feels good. Like something I'm trying to like still articulate it, but something about just the act of even like just throwing a punch or a kick, there's like an impactfulness to this one that I don't know if like even 11 had, where it just feels good to even do like a basic uppercut where you're just like, there's like a crunchiness or like a weight behind the attacks. You're like, oh man, doing even basic combos just feels really satisfying. And yeah, and in terms of the cameo stuff, I'm still getting used to it. I have to sometimes remind myself that it's an option of like, oh, I got like a buddy here I could summon. And granted, like I said, I've only played the campaign, so like, you know, I'm not choosing the cameo fighter. Sometimes you have one, sometimes you don't, just based on what's happening in the story. So you don't even notice until you look and you go, like, oh, okay, Johnny Cage is here. I guess I'll have him do like a shadow kick. But so I'm still like sort of in my infancy of trying to take full advantage of that. But I've had moments of like, I'll test out an attack and you're like, oh, okay, that launches them up. I bet if I did this attack, I could chain that and, you know, do some cool stuff. And I've slowly been getting a hang of that. But so far, they felt sort of like negligible. But again, it's like I think it's going to matter more when I start playing other people, because everyone will be using it and getting good with it. So I'll be forced to get good with it. But in the campaign, it doesn't matter as much. Even when you're fighting like 2-on-1 against someone, it's like, I could probably beat them on my own. But yeah, so far, thumbs up. As a huge MK fan, like I'm having a hell of a time with it. Like that story mode in particular, again, like they're the best in the business when it comes to that with fighting games. And I'm just smiling ear to ear, just seeing these new versions of like old characters and kind of seeing the changes and like, okay, this guy that was a bad guy is a good guy now. Sub-Zero and Scorpion are brothers. That's weird. Where's that gonna go? And it's fun. It's like a good reason to fall in love with that fiction all over again.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I guess we're at the end of the show.
Hey, Alex, can I throw in one thing real quick? While we were recording, Phil Spencer said something about the leak.
Oh.
It's pretty, it's a platitude, but it's at least Phil Spencer tweeted, "We've seen a conversation around old emails and documents," which is a very polite way to say like
conversation.
We saw the leaks. It is hard to see our team's work shared in this way because so much has changed and there's so much to be excited about right now, and in the future we will share real plans when we are ready.
No, you don't want to share your real plans. You don't want to share. I don't think you want to share anything.
Yeah. Trying his best to undercut it, almost kind of politely being like, those are old plans. We've changed those. Dishonored 3. What are you talking about?
It's a polite way of saying I am so freaking mad, guys.
Yeah.
The leaker has been found and has been executed.
For years to come now, we'll be able to, whenever Phil comes up in conversation, we can be like, but his emails. Phil's emails.
You know what would be
They said there was gonna be Fallout 3 in 2023. Where is it?
Where's my
You know what would be if I was Phil Spencer? It's like, well, this is already out there, so we may as well have fun with it. I would wear a t-shirt that just has one of his emails printed on it.
Oh,
and, like,
yeah.
The next showcase thing.
Funny. That would be good. He should do that.
It's just the one with the moats.
Yeah.
Just builds a moat on stage next time.
And then a bloodbath in it.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to share that before we wrapped up because it seemed pertinent. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, if you enjoyed the show and you want to support us, please go pick up a single issue of the magazine. They're now available at GameStop.com/GameInformer. You can get them for $5.99 plus shipping on the website. If you want physical, it's a great way to get it. You can also find them in stores. If you find a GameStop near you, you can go. I'd call them, just say, "Hey, what issues do you have that are physical?" And I'm sure they can help you out. Of course, if you just want a digital subscription, get all of our words, our magazine, all of our pretty graphics and layouts sent directly to your device of your choice every month whenever it's ready, or every cycle whenever it's ready. you can do that through a digital subscription. Head over to GameInformer.com/magazine to get started and read the magazine today. Follow these fellas here on social media. You can follow Kyle at Kyle M. Hilliard on Blue Sky. You can also follow Marcus at Marcus Stewart 7. Follow Wes at LeBlanc Wes, and you can follow me at It's Van Aken. Do want to give a shout out to a recent podcast review written by JTWNSC via Apple Podcasts. They said, great video game podcast. It's a podcast that keeps you updated on the latest news, along with some great reviews. Thank you, JTWNSC. Shout out to you.
Thank you.
If you would like to leave a review, you can do so on Apple Podcasts. I do keep an eye on them and shout them out. And thanks for rating the show on Spotify. It really helps us out. Lastly, go listen to All Things Nintendo, our Nintendo podcast that comes out every Friday, hosted by Brian Shea. And go and give a listen to Fun Games and the Reignite podcast, which belong to our podcast editor, Matt Storm. They edit the podcast every week for us, the audio version, and make it sound great. And we obviously pay them, but if you want to go and check out some gaming podcasts, it'd be a great way to support them and show your appreciation. So that's gonna do it for the Game Informer show this week. We will see you next Thursday, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.